We start this. How do we start? How do we start to say, you know what? Let's invest back in the motherland.
I think the key is, first of all, you got to release the fear, because a lot of African Americans are afraid to go to Africa.
Nah, because I'm not gonna lie.
Naturally,
I was offered so many shows to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, and then they told me I could get shots.
All right, so covering Akon, talking about investing in Africa and even returning to Africa. And so I'll put in the description, I'll put like the timestamps for all the other shit I just mentioned. So if you want to go check that out and just kind of catch the gems of what he's talking about without N.O.R.E being drunk and his little drunk chatter, you could catch that. But I'm gonna really talk about the whole investing in Africa, returning to Africa, more so returning to Africa. So, alright, so what happened?
Why should we invest in Africa?
this is what I can tell you. I know a lot of times we have the tendency to blame the white man for everything that's going wrong, right? With the circumstances that surround us, that's why we believe that way, you know? So at the end of the day, it was like, if you are in a position in life where you feel like you don't own your own content, you don't own anything, this is the opportunity now to be able to own that in which we're complaining about. Because in Africa, it's a clean slate. And you already got the information, you're already educated on how to do it, because we've done it here and made billions of dollars for corporations all day. Africa is the only place in the world where black people can go and build Fortune 500 companies from scratch within 5 years.
It could be like China, easily.
No, seriously. And this took them hundreds of years to build. You can build it now within 5 years.
Yeah.
How could Africa be the new China? How can we say that? So
Black people.
For all our black people, yes.
Go back to Africa.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing here, do it there. Whether it's real estate, entertainment, education,
label, sneaker company,
whatever.
clothing line,
Whatever.
start it there.
Do it there. Don't even start it. Do it there. It's going to grow out of there anyway.
We start this. How do we start? How do we start to say, you know what? Let's invest back in the motherland.
I think the key is, first of all, you got to release the fear, because a lot of, African Americans are afraid to go to Africa.
Nah, because I'm not gonna lie.
Naturally.
I was offered so many shows to Africa. I'll be honest, and then they told me I could get shots, and I was like, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never actually been to Africa because I didn't want to get the shots. I didn't know they injecting shit in me. Like, I was scared. This is back in the day.
That's why I said you got to release the fear.
Gotta release the fear.
You have to, because first of all, only white people need shots to go to Africa. Black people don't need no shots to go to Africa.
But why is that even a rumor that you need shots to go to Africa?
I mean, it's fear. The same way they told you AIDS started in Africa.
Wow.
You could die from malaria. They telling you all this stuff. None of that stuff is real.
Wow.
They tell you, well, you go to Africa, you gotta take, shots, and you gotta take like 5 or 6 different, types of shots to save you from this, save you from that, save you from this.
Why does that rumor even exist, though?
I mean, because they know the value of black people going back home. Can you just imagine if African Americans in America decided, you know what, man, fuck America, we going back home, and then all the value that we bring here, we took over there, America wouldn't exist. Just imagine, man, all the major ball players left, started their own team back home. All the major recording artists left, started their own labels back home. Just imagine, just those 2 sectors. We're not talking about all the inventors that never got the credit for all the shit that they inventing, like cell phones and all that black people invented.
Black excellence.
You would never even know. All these software companies that's taking, you have no idea, we don't even know how much value we even have. We have no idea. Just imagine if we just woke up one day.
So, after you hear what Akon talks about, the most natural thing to think about is, if black people in America were to return to Africa, what could happen? You know what I mean? So, people can get disease. That's definitely a real possibility. I looked into this. It took me about 5 to 10 minutes. The biggest ones, if you're in what they call the yellow fever belt, I guess it's like some areas of Africa that have mosquitoes that are more prone to transport yellow fever. There's that. And then on a lower risk is malaria. There's vaccines for yellow fever. I don't know if there's vaccines for malaria, but there's definitely medicine for malaria that you can take. I imagine there's vaccines for malaria though. Anyways, so you could get disease. On the health end, you could get disease. On your family end, you may have to start all over. You might leave family behind. You might leave some of your close friends behind. Even networks of people like the local car mechanic, the local landscaper, I mean, your friendly neighbor who will look out for you when you're out of town, that type of shit. You're gonna have to start new there. You have to get a whole new career. Well, maybe not a whole new career, but definitely a whole new job, unless your job isn't relevant out there, in which case you would need a whole new career. So you definitely need to find out how you're making your money. And something else, so that's your your health, your family, your economic or financial. And then on a social level, which seems to be very important to black people, I'll say people of African descent. I'm gonna use that term over and over, PABs. I'm gonna just abbreviate that bitch. Can attend popular cultural events, so pop culture. So if you're a big NFL, NBA fan, you're not going to be able to just go pick up and say, I'm going to go to a Knicks game, a Celtics game, a Lakers game, a Raiders game, a Patriots game, a Cowboys game. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to go to a Beyonce concert, a Jay-Z concert, Bruno Mars concert, Rihanna concert. Chris Brown. You're not going to be able to do that shit. Although those people do show up in those countries, so it's not like you actually will be able to catch some of those concerts. You're just not going to be able to catch the concerts they do out here, which goes without saying. No shit. They definitely do concerts in Africa. I don't want to say that they tour all of Africa, but I've definitely seen a lot of these musicians tour in certain places in Africa multiple times. So, and I imagine if you're in Africa, getting across from country to country must be easier than obviously flying back to the States. And depending on how far up North Africa you are, if you really want to take the flight, you might be able to just go to Europe and it'll be cheaper than coming back to the US. So there's that. That's what's going to happen in the short term. I'll say, what's going to hit you immediately. You dig what I'm saying? In long term, some of those things like the family ailments, okay, you're leaving your family and your friend and your other local networks behind, but over time, say after the 2 years and on up, you're going to have built a lot of that shit up. You're going to meet new car mechanics. You're going to meet new places to get your cell phone screens cracked and repaired. You're going to meet the best grocery stores and where to find your doctor, and although you should probably find that out immediately, but that'd be one of the first things I'll find out. You're gonna have, depending on where you at in life, you're gonna probably recreate a family. Dig what I'm saying? So you're gonna have a sense of community, and it's gonna be a strong sense of community, not some I'm sure if you don't want people in your business, you can live like that out there too, which I'm that kind of person. I wouldn't want people all in my shit. But it's also good to have people in your community who looking out for you, not spying on you, looking out for you. There's a big difference. Then if enough people do this move over time, there's gonna be a force for the culture to move to Africa. Like, if enough athletes, enough musicians, and this is something Akon makes a point of, they're gonna have to move it because we are the culture. So if we move to Africa, we are the culture. Like, how can you not? You dig what I'm saying? So in the long term, the benefits kind of outweigh, because now you're in a country where you actually do influence politics. Like, fuck this democracy that we live in. We got like 2 black people in Senate, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. We got a few black people in Congress, in the House of Representatives, Maxine Waters. Yeah. I'm probably forgetting some other black people. I don't know all of them, but we ain't got too many. And it's not like we're gonna have too many at one given time. You dig what I'm saying? And we live in a country that hates us. You know what I mean? Like, one of the primary, so when you think of self-love, right? You think of self-love, you say, I'm gonna take care of myself on a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual level. I'm gonna keep my commitments to myself because I respect myself. I'm gonna be proud of the original state of my body from birth. I mean, be proud of how I was born. You know, I'm gonna be proud of the efforts I make and how far I've come in life, and take pride in what I've done and what I've achieved. And I'm gonna be able to identify myself, you know, like, in the sense of, I don't care what other people think about me. I'm not seeking approval. And also in the sense of, I'm proud of my heritage and where I come from. Kind of going back to even the original state of your body. An extension of that is the culture and the heritage and the community and the nationality, or maybe country or region, or wherever you come from, you know, to have a clear identity of who you are, you know what I mean? But most importantly, not most importantly, but, you know, one of the most important things about loving yourself is you will only keep yourself where you want it. If you love yourself, you don't keep yourself around people who don't like you. If you love yourself, you don't stay in a cipher of fake friends who, you know, envy you and jealous you, and, you know what I mean? And that's on a microcosm level. On a macro level, when you think about what we're doing in the United States, we're living in a country where we are not loved. Like, that Dallas situation, Amber, whatever, and Botham, Jean, excuse me, I don't know homeboy name, homeboy who was in his apartment and got killed in his apartment. Like, we're trying to fight for justice in a system, in a country where we could get killed being home, doing nothing, minding our business. And we want to be accepted. And I'm just not saying all black people. Chances are, if you watch it this far into the video, you're not one of those black people. But there's a number of black people. And I even throw in these politicians. Like, I admire what they're doing, and it's very necessary. Let me not throw them in, because I actually don't know them on a personal level. But I get the sense that if you believe in fighting for justice within a system that originated based on this system, everything in America is what it is because they oppressed black people. So the political system in place is here because of the successful oppression of black people. The medical quality, whether good or bad, I'd say good in many ways, bad in a lot of other ways too, for different reasons. The technology is great, the information is great, the culture is horrible because we're reactive, not proactive, in terms of medicine and medical administration, and, you know, everything in this system of the United States is based on the oppression of black people. All these immigrants who come and say, I worked hard and I built my own thing. Look, they let in just as many immigrants after they legalized slavery as there were slaves. So for those 4 million whatever free slaves, they let in 4 million combined Chinese, Irish, Polish, German. And that's why I don't even want to hear all that I worked hard, my grandparents worked hard to build a business. Because, yeah, they did work hard. I'm not saying that they didn't, but they worked hard without the disadvantage of having been a slave for the last 300 years, roughly. So they worked hard, but they didn't have a handicap. And mind you, we actually overcame that handicap. The only real handicap that's been affecting us to present hasn't been that of slavery. We were moving forward aggressively up until the 70s, where civil rights movement was killed off. Heroin was, there was an influx of heroin into the black community. And then after that, with Reagan and Reaganomics and all of that, we had the influx of heroin and the influx of crack cocaine. Crack cocaine was taught to Freeway Ricky Ross by the CIA. So, you dig what I'm saying? Like, what are we really talking about? Yeah. So, on that note, we lost our cultural identity really about 50 years ago. This isn't like we've been damaged since slavery. It's that the generation that remembered slavery was damaged, and then the next generation never knew that history, so they weren't able to pass the information along to our generation, to the generations that lead to our generation, and so forth. So now you have, and furthermore, the generation that was lost became one of the first most destructive generations, you know, gangsters, drug peddlers, and that's when the pimping, ironically, that time around the 70s, where heroin and then eventually crack cocaine in the 80s had an influx and flooded the urban streets. That's just so happens to be where hip hop was born. It's right around the 70s. Shit is deep. Deeper than I'm capable of going. Point is we got a choice right now. We seeing stuff like if you could be in your home and get killed minding your business, that's war. That's war. So we got a choice to make. Are we gonna hang around friends that don't like us? Are we gonna live in a country that we're not desired? The only thing we're desired for, I'll tell you what we're desired for: cheap labor. It's never changed. Slavery has never changed. The only difference is now you work in minimum wage jobs. The only difference is now they got Section 8 to keep mothers living. You gotta make a certain threshold, you gotta make below a certain threshold of income to qualify. So they want to keep the black mother incentivized to be poor. As long as we're cheap labor, as long as we're cheap workers, and we continue to help this country grow, then we'll be beneficial. And as soon as we're not beneficial and they no longer need us for cheap labor, you can trust and believe they will be getting rid of us. And that's why you see they're starting to make it normal for them to get rid of us. You ask why? Because the cost of cheap labor to help this country grow is reaching a point where there's no more economies of scale. Now that's economics talk. What's economies of scale? Google that shit. I'm gonna summarize it with a rough definition. Economies of scale is where the benefit is exponentially greater for the added input. So if you have one, I'm not doing that. Google it. Do some fucking reading. The point is, And there's diseconomies of scale, which would be the opposite, like negative exponential effect. And so now we're reaching an equilibrium point where the cheap labor that they can mandatorily force on us, these little federal minimum wage increase bumps, these shits, you know, it's not in the incentive of a U.S. corporation to want to pay that when they know they can still go overseas and get cheap labor for cheaper. And technology is catching up the pace where artificial intelligence is going to be the cheapest labor and the most efficient and the most productive, because the whole human emotion, psyche shit, health issues, all that shit's out the window. No retirement, no emotional problems calling out, no family problems with children. So we're not the cheapest labor anymore. Slavery was the ultimate cheapest labor, but now we're not even on an economic brainwash level where we were just brainwashed to live this life that we're living. We're not the cheapest labor anymore to even do this shit. So the need for us is going. So we could chill around these fake friends who are starting to notice they don't have a need for us. But we could start loving ourselves and go somewhere where we're wanted. You dig what I'm saying? And so one of the things he talks about is you have to get rid of the fear. And so what are some of the things? I mean, I already talked about some of the things that could happen. The disease, there's vaccines for that shit. Although, you know, some people will get into it and say these vaccines are things that we don't need. Akon said we don't even need these vaccines. That's for white people. And I started to Google the vaccines, and I found on some websites they're not mandatory. Me personally, I probably get them shits. I ain't gonna hold you. And I don't even believe in vaccines. Like, I looked a lot of these shits up. They put a lot of shit in it that could really tweak with you and fuck your genetics up for real. But I ain't gonna hold you. I'm not trying to go out there having lived in an environment that's as sterile as this one. I'm not saying the United States is clean overall. I'm just saying we don't have mosquitoes carrying yellow fever, and we're not exposed to malaria and even like that typhoid shit that you can, typhoid fever that you can get from contaminated water or contaminated foods. We're not exposed to that. I'm not trying to fuck around with that. That's just me. But we don't technically need that shit. And he's saying, and I would do my research, obviously, so I'm not going to take anybody's word, but he's saying we don't, as long as you're a black person, African descent person with melanin in you, we don't even need these shots. He's saying this shit's for white people. Which, when you think about it, many diseases killed off white people when they were invading black countries historically, like in the Haiti Revolution, when Napoleon invaded Haiti. Part of why the revolution was successful is because white people were getting malaria. Black people were living there the whole time. They weren't getting none of this shit. So these dudes getting malaria, it was because they couldn't tolerate it. Black people, their genetics weren't making them susceptible to that type of shit. You dig what I'm saying? So they weren't vulnerable. Hey man, we gotta start. Nobody's gonna put respect on our names for us. We gotta put some respect on our names for ourselves. We move, we can get the respect we deserve. And the funny thing is, when you move, we're not just gonna get the respect we deserve as Africans or people of African descent in Africa, but that trickles down all across the world to people of African descent globally. See, the reason why people don't respect anyone of African descent, excuse me, the reason why countries don't respect people of African descent anywhere in the world is because Africa as a continent and the countries within Africa and the African Union, they're all in turmoil. 99% because of infiltration of European belief systems and politics and funding for internal destruction and chaos. You know what I mean? They have a lot of shit that, from propaganda to actual warfare that they're funding. You know, there's all of that. Exploitation of resources, there's all of that. But when you look at like China, right? I think I'm stealing this from, what's his name, Umar Johnson. I definitely heard him say this, and I thought it was a great point. When you look at like a country like China, you don't see Chinese people of even Chinese descent. They're not necessarily Chinese nationals. They're probably American citizens, but they're of Chinese descent. You don't see these Chinese people getting harassed by police the way black people do. There's two arguments I would make. Umar Johnson's argument is because those Chinese people have a strong, united government that recognizes their nationality. They may not be Chinese citizens, but they are Chinese blood. And by them having that heritage, China isn't gonna tolerate that shit, because technically if you do it to a Chinese blood American citizen, you would do it to a Chinese blood Chinese citizen. And it's really all one and the same thing. So if that shit were to happen, China as a country is gonna start taking action, putting the US in check. And that'll make the US regulate itself real quick. And so that's the Umar Johnson argument. He says that for all these countries. He says if you have a strong base, anywhere you go globally, respect will follow. I think it's a sound point. My other point, and I kind of just came up with this in my head as I was saying it, is it could be as simple as complexion, because that's been something that's been going on in history as long as life, where it's like, as long as you got a lighter complexion, other countries will find you a bit more favorable compared to when you have a darker complexion. But then I guess this isn't really true, because there's a lot of Indians, Eastern Indians in Asia, who have a dark complexion and they get respect. You don't see them getting harassed. I mean, they get grouped in the bucket of Middle Easterns, so they get harassed on that aspect. But it's not like they're getting harassed like as routinely as you see a black American in the hood getting harassed. That's not even an everyday thing. That's a multi-times a day thing. I wish there was like a statistic for how many times, how many minutes every day someone who's of African descent gets harassed by the authorities. Because it's gotta be significant. It's gotta be like every 20 minutes a black person in America is being confronted with stress by police or other enforcing agencies. It's gotta be like every 20 minutes, every 5 minutes in America, or every 30 seconds, some wild shit. You know what I mean? And what's the alternative? Well, we could say, nah, I don't want to move to Africa. I ain't trying to be around the mosquitoes. I ain't trying to leave everything behind here, my family. I ain't trying to find a new job there. I ain't trying to find a new way of life out there. I'm not trying to go to some culture where niggas is living in the jungle and all this ignorant shit that people believe. But if you don't see the trend that we're only here as cheap labor, what you don't realize is they're squeezing us out of here. So what it's really going to come down to is either going to be real physical slaves, like 16, 17, 1800 slaves, like all over again, but in this era, like on some futuristic shit, electronic ID, tattoos, and retina eye scans and fingerprint shit, all the shit you could do on your iPhone, facial recognition, but like slavery with this technology where it ain't gonna be no Harriet Tubmans. Let's get that straight. In this era with this technology, it ain't gonna be no Harriet Tubmans, no Frederick Douglasses. It's not. So, with the squeezing pressure to put people in prison, to kill them off through poor health and systemic conditions, like even just on a local level, poor resources. I'm gonna group this under food. You look at a Flint, Michigan, and how they got leaded pipes. You know how many other places in the U.S. got leaded pipe systems, and I bet you how many of those are urban centers. So where they're targeting urban communities based on them being urban communities and trying to wipe these people out by tactics of food. Because I mean, ultimately you use that food to boil a pot of pasta or make a cup of tea or make some coffee or drink. Even if you use a filter, some of that shit's not coming out of the filter. Or to take a shower. And let's get it straight, anything that's making contact with the skin is being absorbed. So if you're taking a shower with this lead-ridden water, it's going into you, my G. Where they're gonna try to eliminate as many people through food, medical, health ways as possible. However many don't eliminate themselves by being subject to the justice system, those will be the first slaves. They're already using prisoners to put out wildfires that even the fire department don't want to put out in California. If that ain't slavery, I don't know what is. But I'm gonna sip my lemon water though.